Welcome to the Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. This podcast is designed to provide momentum in our God-given roles of leadership as we partner together to equip today's Christian leaders for tomorrow's opportunities. Whether you're a pastor, youth leader, ministry volunteer, parent, or student, we want to be your go-to and most trusted resource for equipping and encouragement when it comes to your ministry and leadership influence. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
Well, welcome back for another Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. This is season 3, episode 2, and we're talking about eating culture for breakfast.
Boom.
I have with me Jeff Bogue. Jeff is the president of Momentum, the senior pastor of Grace Church of Greater Akron, and Jeff,
all-around good guy.
An all-around good guy. Although you're an Ohio State fan, so we won't go there.
Oh,
We won't
listen.
go there.
Guess this conversation's over.
Football season is starting, and we probably shouldn't even get into our allegiances and who we root for.
Yeah, because Ohio State fan is probably an understatement. Like I literally, so at our the campus of our church that I teach at, we have Saturday night services. I literally don't watch the games because I'll be upset.
Yes.
And I never played football and I never went to Ohio State. So like why it upsets me is this whole mystery, but I'm like, I need to not know.
Share your your catchphrase with Michigan, and you say it often when you preach.
Yeah.
Like what is it?
God doesn't want you to smoke, drink, or chew, or date girls who do, or cheer for Michigan.
I love it because every time you say that, like you could collect it. People know it's coming now. They know.
Yeah, and they still laugh.
They still laugh.
Can't stop it.
Usually, there's like a collective groan, and then there's like the good chuckle.
Like I will literally call people out from the pulpit for wearing Michigan stuff. I'm brutal about it, but it's this dumb. As a pastor, this is a good thing. This is a little pastor talk here. Like as a pastor, it's this dumb way that you can be normal.
Yes.
And you can be one of the guys.
100%.
And let it be a joke. And then take it when Ohio State lost to Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Like you got to take it, when you lose. But what's funny is maybe the biggest guy in our church is the biggest Michigan fan. So
man.
I'm like this little boy pointing at him.
Yeah,
I know. So, but
he takes it.
We lost to Michigan last year. He was on a cruise in the Bahamas, and he called me to rub it in. It was hilarious. I was like, "You're crazy." He's like, "I had to let you know."
Yeah.
So it was fun.
Yeah. When sports is fun in that way because you can show the real side of you and some of your humanity. The Cubs were a few years ago. I was preaching and the Cubs were in the playoffs and I closed my message and Jesus, would you help the Cubs to win the World Series? Right? People
is that the year they won it?
That was the year that they won it. It was I had people coming up to me like, God answered your prayer. I'm like, right?
Well, it's the only way it would ever happen.
It's just fun to do that stuff.
Yeah, dumb stuff like that. I don't know. It just makes you normal. It makes you not be the holy man at the holy place with the holy message.
Yes.
And it just, I don't know. It's fun. And I do love Ohio State football. It's funny. I don't love the other sports. It's the football team that I really follow and care about, so it's fun.
There is something magical, Jeff, about this season, about fall, about football, food, the community, the getting together with friends and watching a game. And even my wife, she's like, I don't care about football. I just want to cook for people and have people in our home and hang out.
It's so much fun, and that's exactly it. There's no better nap than a cool fall day with the Browns playing and you fall asleep on the couch. There's no better, we're from Ohio, so one of the things we get this time of year is our corn comes in, roasting corn on a fire, watching a football game. It's just, I love the fall.
Both of my kids, they love sitting by the fire in the hammock. We have 2 trees right next to our fire pit, and we'll hang up the hammock, we'll start a bonfire, and we'll watch Notre Dame football.
Yeah.
They love
it's
that.
just a blast.
Yeah.
Now, my poor wife, if you haven't met Heidi before, she's Brazilian. So when the fall starts, all she thinks about is winter. So she's like, it's getting cold. I'm like,
What's
honey,
happening?
let's wait till it gets cold at least before we freak out about it. She's like, it's on its way.
Yeah, I'm with her on that one. Actually, I'm with her.
I don't even mind it. But
Well, in this conversation, we really want to kind of talk about culture and how do you leverage culture for good. Obviously, we're encouraged through the lens of Scripture to not like conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of our minds, right? And so this idea of culture is so challenging in church world, in ministry, as we lead, as we parent. And so on this episode, as we kind of dive into a new season of podcast, as we transition into a new school year for many of us, we wanted to help think through what are some of the cultural pressures that you might be facing, and how could we help you think differently to maybe overcome in those situations. So Jeff, on a recent podcast episode, you had talked about culture is waterboarding our students. And I actually meant to pull this up. I had it a second ago. If you want to go back and listen to that episode, we talked about rapid culture changes. It's kind of at the end of season 2. And this was a thing that you had talked about of like, kind of take us back, maybe for those who haven't heard that episode, but what did you mean by that phrase? And what do you kind of see going on in our culture today that kind of led you to that conclusion or that analogy?
yeah, so that's it's the best word picture I could think of is culture is waterboarding our kids. And what I mean by that is when I was a kid, I'm 52 years old. So this is, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
When I was a kid and going to junior high and high school, I could escape the culture by going home. And so whatever the bully was at school, I didn't have to see them to the next day, and I didn't have to see them on the weekend. My home was controlled. There was one screen, was one television, and mom and dad had control over that television. If I went to a movie, there was one place to go watch a movie, and mom and dad would say, what are you watching?
Yeah.
And they'd tell me yes or no. And then when I went to church, church back then was more separatist. So like they would intentionally be like, there's no secular music. So you could get away from it. You could listen to the radio, but you couldn't go download anything. So there were controls and there were breaks and there were breathers. I would say all the way up until 2005 to 2010, when the smartphone really started to take root, that was somewhat the case. There were more screens than there used to be, but it was still somewhat the case that you could isolate a little bit. When screens took over 15, coming up 20 years ago, what happened now is you went from one screen to countless screens in a home. The screen used to be a place of family unity. The family would sit down and watch a television show. Or I remember the Wizard of Oz used to be on TV, and we got to stay up late and watch that, kind of thing.
Yeah.
The screen now is a place of individuality. So even if my family's watching a movie together, we're all on our phones in the boring parts. Me too, right? This is not an accusation. This is just a diagnosis of things. So now we live hyper-individualized lives, and there's no way to isolate our kids from the culture. The bully at school follows them home.
Yeah.
The inappropriate things that are on media and social media can now be viewed in secret, and nobody will ever know. Plus the standards. I remember it was controversial that Daisy Duke wore short shorts on Dukes of Hazzard. Now we're like, that's modesty,
Yes,
kind of thing.
right.
And then there used to be 20 years ago, I'll say now, the school was a place. I remember I was a youth pastor 25 years ago. When I was a youth pastor in the 90s, the school was a place that we thought of almost exclusively as a mission field. We would purposely send Christian kids into that dark place. Now the school, the position of the school back then was benign. The school was not pro-Christ. There weren't 10 commandments on the wall, but the school was not anti-Christ either.
Yep.
So you could have an offense that you could run the school. Now the schools are anti-Christ. So the kids aren't going into a neutral environment. They're going into a aggressive environment. And that is really universal. There's some school districts that are worse than others. But even here in one of our schools, in one of our conservative suburbs, the 5th grade teacher is a transitioned male that's now teaching as a woman. So the kids left last year to Mr. So-and-so, and they're coming back to Miss So-and-so, and the school is propagating that.
Yeah.
If you have a problem with it, the school will come against you. If a kid raises an opposition, the school will come against them.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. It's waterboarding. It's 24/7. You can't escape it. There are very few adults on your side, and there's very few adults that are even neutral.
Yeah.
Where they're like, you have your opinion, I'll have mine. Even that's gone away.
Yes.
And then social media, I don't think any parent has a real understanding of what their kids' social media stuff does, because even if you think you're monitoring it, you're not. They're working around it, or it gets away to it. Pornography would be a big part of that. If you think you've got every filter in the world on your home network, it's not working. They'll figure out the way around it. So it's 24/7, and they can't escape it. And it is a loud, aggressive, predominant message everywhere. We'll take kids to a movie today, and we'll be relieved that there was only heterosexual immorality in it. That's how far things are. So it's inescapable in a lot of ways.
And it on so many levels, I completely agree with what you're saying. On so many levels, we, as parents, as pastors, we see this happening, but we grew up in the generation where we learned how to escape it. We learned those systems.
Well, there was a way.
Yeah,
there was a way to escape it.
And so for us now, I think there are times where we're like, well, how do I help my kids in this culture do that? So we would agree that we need to teach our students how to discern and think critically about these issues, how to process through things through the lens of Scripture and understand the biblical truth of it. But how can we help actually do that? Let's kind of dive into this a little bit deeper on, like, for you as a pastor, even as a parent, like, what are some of the things that you would encourage people to think through? How do you make sense of doing that?
So I would talk about this first just on a leadership level. So one of the things that I believe strongly is that you never lead from a position of fear. You don't lead from what might happen to you or what the bad results may be. And I see this in parenting a lot and in pastoring a lot. I see parents that are like, I'm going to cut my kids off from the world because I'm afraid of what the world's going to do to them. And more often than not, I see that backfire. And you're talking to a person who we did homeschool our children until they went to junior high. So I don't mean like don't homeschool. I'm like, what does that mean to you? And how do you approach that? And what I saw was that the parents that were the most isolationist and the most separatist, their kids rebelled the hardest. They felt controlled. And honestly, several of them actually rejected not only those standards of morality, but actually Christ himself.
Yeah.
So that is leading from a position of fear. Building a wall, building a moat, moving to the middle of nowhere and living off grid is leading from a position of fear. What happens with that is this: it is when you leave from a position of fear, your kids and the people of your church, because I see pastors do this too, they isolate. The people of your church never develop the muscles that are necessary to survive in the arena that they have to go fight in.
Yeah.
So they're never asked a difficult question. They're never pushed against. They never have to choose for themselves what they believe. Now, I am not somebody who my kids were homeschooled until they were in junior high. We did that mostly because I work on the weekends. We have Saturday services. Yeah. And so it was a way for me to be a father. And then they went to a Christian school because we had an opportunity to go. I thought it was valuable. I have 6 children. I needed a school system that was on my team. And so I felt like it was overwhelming to invest in my kid's life and then fight the health teacher.
Yep.
Now, there's upsides and downsides to a Christian school.
Sure.
There's no silver bullet here. But when I say don't be isolationist, what I'm trying to say is I also didn't just like throw my kids to the lions, so to say. Same thing as a pastor. I don't adopt the viewpoints and the theologies or the methods of the world. Mm-hmm. That's different than isolationism. Mm-hmm. And that is 99% of the time going to backfire and backfire hard on that. So don't lead from a position of fear. The way that you lead a family, a church, anything, you lead from a position of vision. Mm. What could God do? What are the opportunities? How can you be different? Mm. And I think as a father and as a pastor, that's what I've tried to do is say, if we approach the community this way and they engaged us this way, look what we could be the agent of cultural change instead of them waterboarding us.
Yep.
When I look at my kids, this is very controversial. So you don't have to do it, but like I never put filters on the internet. I'm like, they beat me. The kids would beat me anyways. What I did was I had frequent and open conversations about pornography. Yep. We never banned our children from social media. We had open and frequent. Now they have to let us follow them. But if they want to set up a secret account, I don't even know. Now they didn't do that, but like we would follow them, we would kind of know. But I didn't freak out every time I saw a post I didn't like. Mm-hmm. I realized, okay, that's our next point of conversation.
Yep.
And God, by His grace, our kids love Jesus. They love the church. Some of them work in the church, some of them work in the marketplace, but they love Jesus, they love the church, they love each other, they love us. Yeah. And because we kind of, I felt like we had to equip them to live in the world they're actually going to live in. Yeah. Right? Now, how was the question you asked, right? So I would say things like this. I would say things like, if you have a healthy local church, help the healthy local church be the base foundation for your kids' friendships. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to play the odds. Mm-hmm. If I have more Christian adults and more Christian families in my kid's life, I'm going to play those odds.
Right.
So we would say yes to church almost 100%. We would not say yes to school all the time. We did not... we would prioritize ministry things over things like sports. So my kids were not going to be the starting varsity whatever because they wouldn't go to the sports camps that summer. But if they asked to go on a mission trip to Mexico, Mom and I are going to work hard and find the money to make that happen.
Yep.
Now, they played sports, but they would have to feel that a little bit, you know? And I'm like, that they actually played varsity sports, but I'm like, yeah, that's the way that is, because that's just not that important. The coach is not going to raise my son. Right. I'm going to do that.
Yep.
I think we create zones where cultural influence is muted for a time. So we're going to have a movie night. My kids actually taught me this phrase. They'll say phones down, friends up, and then they'll say phones down, family up. So we were just on a trip together, and they got after me. They're like, "Dad, get off your phone."
That's awesome.
Because we were playing a game.
Yeah.
We'll spend that hour or two, maybe it's a movie, whatever, and it's funny. We're done. You'll watch everybody check their phone. Dad does it too, but it's a vision. Like, wasn't this actually more fun than being in your room scrolling together at night? Yep. Heidi, my wife, she would make, when the kids were little, I would have movie nights, and we'd watch whatever movie, Star Wars, whatever. Heidi would make special popcorn. Like, we would work together so that we would have a drive-in where I'd take the TV out on the patio, build a fire, we'd roast marshmallows and watch a movie. Well, we would work hard to make that happen because it's an alternative to all these other things, hiking, etc. So I think you can do that kind of stuff. We do that with them even as adults. Sunday afternoons, Heidi will make a meal. She'll put out the menu on a family group chat, and like everybody wanders in and out, including their friends. They'll wander in, which is great because we're like that. This is our crew,
Yeah.
So stuff like that, where we're giving them a different vision. The church and ministry, if you're, I want to say this very, very cautiously, if you're not in a healthy church, you probably need to find one. If your church is in the process of being healthy, then you need to be a part of helping that happen. And if it's healthy, you need to stay. But you got to involve you have to help the kids get involved. And sometimes you have to make that happen because they're going to get drawn into school stuff, etc.
Yeah, Jeff, I love what you're sharing, and just kind of to recap and paraphrase, there's a couple of things I want to like highlight and underline here. I love what you're saying of like check our own hearts as pastors, as parents, as leaders. Like, are we leading from a place of fear? I think it's human nature to tend to like pull away. That's that like fight or flee, and so it is human nature to think like, I'm going to just be a separatist. Like, let's go live in the woods and not interact with anybody. And that's not realistic in today's society. You can't do that. The other side is that the other side of the pendulum is a lot of times you see people just conform to it.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I guess we'll just live by the means of the world and we'll just try our best. And you acquiesce and you give in and I'm like, when I look at scripture, what you're saying is like it's being a transformist. It's not separating or conforming, but it's like, how do we live differently where we live by the vision that God has given us and called us to? And so how do we as leaders, as parents, as pastors, step into what is God's calling on their life, helping them understand that the Holy Spirit lives inside of them and gives them the ability to make right choices and decisions, to discern biblical truth, to make decisions from what clothes am I going to wear, to who are my friends, to what parties and people or places am I going to go. Like, helping them think through that, not again from that place of fear, or not from the place of like, well, I guess it's not going to make a difference anyways, I'll just do whatever. That's both of those are like culture saying like, man up, fight, or acquiesce and cave and give in. That even perspective is like, that's culture saying the choices you make, it's no big deal. Do what's fun, live for the moment. Like, all of that is culture.
Yeah, and you
still speaking in.
As a parent, especially, you cannot live that way. And I tell you, I mean this lovingly, guys. I'm really not trying to be snarky, but I go to high school sports a lot, because my kids play. It's the parents are the most unpleasant part of it. And I think I have to, many times I have to go stand by myself, because I'm like, what grade are you in, Mom? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And yelling and screaming. And I'm like, what are we doing? Like, where's the adult? And I'll see that parents will value, like, it could be workaholism. It could be being the most popular kid at the pool. I'm like, this is not, you're living the same version of life that your high school kid is living because you're valuing the same things. Yeah. Now, I can tell you, when you choose not to live that way, you don't get invited. But I also don't go. Like, when they're like, come to this thing, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I was joking one time with a parent, because my daughter finished up her final season of high school sports. And a parent she goes, are you going to miss this? I go, no, I'm not. Like, I love watching my daughter play and my boys play sports. I don't enjoy sitting in the rain. I don't enjoy having my schedule locked down. I don't enjoy all that at all. I enjoyed it as her dad. It's not life-giving to me as a person. So as a family, like, for instance, my friends, my closest adult friends, for the most part, are families.
Yeah.
And our family is friends with this other family.
Yep.
Like, I'll get together I don't go out bowling and drinking with my buddies.
Right.
Like, if my family's not, now that doesn't mean that our kids have to be best friends.
Right.
But they do enjoy looking forward to being with each other, and they laugh together. They grew up that way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, those things are respites from the culture.
Yeah.
I look a lot at Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and Daniel when they were first taken from Israel and brought to Babylon. And Babylon did everything possible to indoctrinate them with the teachings of Babylon, down to changing their names.
For sure. They
went from God-centered Hebrew names. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were actually named after pagan gods. And all of it, and yet they survived. And what they did, they had each other. We don't know a ton.
Yep.
They had each other. They learned when they first came, and they went on we're not eating the the food from the false gods. They learned to stand up on little things. God was faithful. And that was practice for, we're not bowing down to the idol. We are going to go to the lion's den.
Right.
And I just look and say, I think that's what we have to teach our kids, but it changes. I think I'll probably get emails about this, but hear me, okay? If you're listening, hear me. I think it's less important that my kids never see pornography, because they're going to. I see it. And I'm like, I was looking for a yard tool the other day. I'm like, this is insane. So anyways,
down the highway, billboards,
walk. Yeah. Okay. So I think it's less important that my kids don't see pornography than it is that they come and tell me when they do. That's actually what's important. Right. The idea that I'm going to get my kid through life with no porn, it's like, it's not going to happen. Now, I don't want them addicted. I don't want them.
Yes.
But it's less important to me that they don't mess up than that they come and confess that to me and we work it out. And that does not mean there are not consequences. I'm not a passive father, and Heidi is not a passive mother.
Yeah.
But when the kids come to us, like, that's more, and that's culture is keep a secret. So yeah. in these harbors from this waterboarding, creating those deep relationships, doing things that are anti-cultural but visionary.
Yep.
Let's take a family missions trip.
Yeah.
And instead of going to Universal this year, let's go and live in the ghetto. We did this many times as a family. Now, next year we went to Universal because Harry Potter Land is just cool.
Right.
It really is. And Harry Potter, he's the devil. I'm like, have you read the books? They're actually pretty intriguing. But we'll process the books.
Yes. Yeah.
See what I'm saying? And it's interesting as adults. Like the Barbie movie is the biggest movie in the world right now. Mm-hmm. When I listen to pundits, they'll talk about how evil this is, wicked, anti-God, gender, blah, blah, blah. When I listen to my 19-year-old kids talk about it, they talk about it being funny.
Right.
And I'm like, what's the difference? They're like, oh, that's hilarious. Like, why? They're like, I said, well, I heard this and that. And they're like, oh, yeah, there's always that stuff.
Yeah.
But this stuff is hilarious.
Right.
I'm like, okay, you're discerning. You're not being sucked in.
Yes.
You're discerning about it.
Yeah.
So hyper relationship harbors involvement. Like we share an iTunes account. Like I see what you do. I'm not going to freak out about the music. I'm going to be very strict. In my house, you got in trouble for deceiving me, lying to me, or hitting your sibling.
Yeah.
And in particular, disrespecting your mother.
There you go.
Right? That was it.
Yeah.
Not your room, not your hair, not the tattoo you came home with.
Right. I love that because you're equipping them. And in essence, what you're saying is you can take a stand on these issues and you don't have to be confrontational about it. You don't have to be like a jerk about like where you land on your faith. Like there are so many times where I see now, like people are like, well, we're getting persecuted. I'm like, you're getting persecuted because you're annoying and how you're handling this. You're not getting persecuted because of your love for Jesus. I'm sorry. Like, but
I think
that's the heartbeat. Like it's leading from a place of health, not.
It's leading from a place of health. And like, I'll give you an example of lying. So all my kids lied to me. Everybody does. Everybody does this, right?
Yeah.
So a kid lies to me. I can approach that two ways, or maybe three. How dare you lie to me?
Right.
I'm your father. I have power. I'm going to exercise it with this paddle on your behind right now. Right?
Yeah.
Another way to approach that is, how dare you lie to me? I'm weak and I don't know what to do. And how could you? I thought we were best friends. That's another way to approach it. A third way to approach it is, listen, we don't lie. Why don't we lie? Because it's wrong. Nope. Because it dishonors God. Nope. Because lying lips are an abomination. Nope. Why don't we lie? We don't lie because people who love each other don't lie to each other.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you, do you love your daddy? Yes. Well, I love you. Have I ever lied to you? No. So we don't lie to each other.
Yeah.
Now go get the paddle.
Yeah. Right.
Right? But it's a relational context. So what I'm trying to show is, the next time tell me the truth.
Right.
Because we love each other, and we'll just work it. It doesn't mean you're not going to get in trouble.
Right.
It just means we're going to work it out completely differently.
Yep.
The same thing to a church leader. Church pastors, listen, can we all just quit pretending that we don't struggle with pornography? If you're a human being in North America, it's a part of your life. So let's just put that off the table.
Yeah.
Now, how do we bear that burden with one another?
Right.
How do we sharpen iron? Can we all just quit pretending that there's not certain things about our spouse that we hate? Not dislike, hate.
Sure.
So how do we, in that arena, they are actually an enemy. How do we love them like Christ? Like, let's just stop that.
Yes.
And let's deal with the real things. And then relationships are built. And now we're living in Babylon with each other. And when it's time to bow down to an idol, that's where the strength to do that is from.
So good. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing that. That's super helpful. We want to continue to provide value in these contexts and in these conversations. So this is one example where we would love nothing more on this podcast than to take a concept like this that maybe is you're wrestling with. You're trying to figure out how do I lead in my family, in my ministry? How do we make sense of these things? We love going deeper on these issues. We want to provide resources and be helpful in this conversation. So throughout the next several weeks and months, if you have questions, if you have other topics, if you have conversations that you'd like to be a part of, reach out to us. That's why we're here at Momentum Ministry Partners. So thanks so much for tuning in to another episode.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We hope you found it to be valuable. And if you did, would you share it with someone else in your network who might enjoy it? Also, would you please go on and subscribe, rate, and review it? That way you don't miss any more and somebody else will be able to find it too. Also, because we want to be your trusted resource, if you have a question or topic that you would like us to discuss on an upcoming episode, send that to us via email to info@buildmomentum.org, or you can send us a DM on any of our social media platforms. You can find us there at Momentum Ministry Partners. Also, if you need more information on our ministry, be sure to check out our website at buildmomentum.org. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you next time.